Welcome to the National Institute for Industry and Career Advancement Accelerator Series, virtual forums designed to help educate and inform individuals and organizations about the services and solutions they provide to facilitate talent pipeline development and establish innovative registered apprenticeships. Today's virtual forum is Innovating Ohio, Expanding Opportunities in Manufacturing. This event is presented in collaboration with the United States Department of Labor, Manufacturing Works, Process Technology, and Lorain County Joint Vocational School. Now, please welcome NIICA's President and CEO, Mike Russo.
Well, welcome everyone. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming here today, taking time out of your busy schedules, and the folks that are attending virtually as well. Also, a special thank you to Wendy Chun-Hoon, who's here from the U.S. Department of Labor. She's the director of the Women's Bureau, for making the trip up for this really important event, important discussion today. Also, Lorain County JVS, Manufacturing Works and Process Technology, and all the educators, companies, and government officials that are here today. None of this happens. Building the workforce to support these important industries doesn't happen without that collaboration. I'm the President and CEO of the National Institute for Industry and Career Advancement. Under the Institute, we have the National Center for Skills-Based Learning. Actually, our director's here today from the National Center, Clay Nagel. Clay, if you raise your hand, everybody will talk to you at the end. That's great. So there's Clay. At the Institute, we're responsible for a national strategy to build the talent pipeline to support strategic industry sectors. Think of tech-based industries and advanced manufacturers and their supply chains. They're important to national security and global competitiveness. And that, on its one level down, and most importantly, that's regional economic development, making sure that we support regions as they grow. So we have this national strategy that's applicable to regions. We have national infrastructure, technical expertise, and we work with folks like in Ohio Manufacturing Works to really help to ensure that you have what you need to succeed. I'm excited. I'm at events and involved with cities and regions all over the country. And this region, and in Ohio in general, you're second to none when it comes to passion. Passion, expertise. You're doing so much good work. That it's really a pleasure to be here. And what we can do on a national level, bringing that national perspective, is what do you have and where are the potential gaps that you can fill, and how can we support? How can we take two nickels and rub them together and get 25 cents, right? In Ohio, I believe manufacturing is about 16% of your GDP in the state, and about 12% of the workforce is tied up with manufacturing-related careers. So it's really important. But there's a gap, and with the proliferation of technology and advancements of related careers, that gap is really projected to grow. And as big investments are made, and there's a lot of talk, for example, about Intel, that's a semiconductor company, obviously, but across the piece, as those investments are made, you have to support them with the workforce. We're also really the nation's leader in semiconductor talent pipeline development strategy, as well as the U.S. Department of Labor's industry intermediary. We're contracted by the U.S. Department of Labor to expand innovative competency-based registered apprenticeships to support registered apprenticeships in semiconductor nanotechnology and really high advanced manufacturing and related supply chains. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Today we're here to talk about expanding opportunity. And it's funny when people talk about DEI initiatives or focusing on more diverse groups, et cetera. I like to boil it down to really a common sense approach. In order to meet the needs of the workforce for tomorrow, we have to have all the seats filled. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that the pipeline includes everyone. So I like to erase what we look like. I'm part of the human race, right? But if we know that only 11% of women are involved in manufacturing engineering careers, there's a huge opportunity. And for folks that can't start their career or their career life, if you will, by going to a university, maybe can't afford it, aren't inclined to do so, aren't experienced with that, starting with those entry technician jobs and operator jobs and really working your way up is a great pathway. Stackable apprenticeships. We're here to talk about pre-apprenticeships today. I don't want to kind of jump the gun in that discussion, but that learn and earn model is so important. And if we focus, and that's why we're so happy that Wendy's here to join us today and bring your expertise. They're a great team and really can share some of the best practices in helping to encourage women to participate. So that's why we're here today, to talk about how we can get more people engaged, not only because it's the right thing to do from an opportunity perspective, an individual perspective, but it's right to do for business sustainment, business development. The Gateway Apprenticeship Program, if you think about it, it's interesting. Some regions we go to, there's not anything being done in that area at all. Here, the fundamental components are already in place. You're already advancing what we call the Gateway Apprenticeship Program, where you take pre-apprenticeship, you leverage the K-12 system, and even adult learners in CTE programs, but leverage that public enterprise to create the pathway and give credit to students once the curriculum's aligned with those target industries, so they get the credit they need to be able to advance more quickly with those employers. I'm so impressed with your campus and the work that you're doing here today. This is not news to any of you all. What we're able to do in partnership is really bring infrastructure in to make the transition seamless, to make the alignment with industry seamless. Last night's dinner, there was a lot of discussion around we have to get better connected to industry. That's what we bring to the table. We have that almost automated for you, and we can help really align those courses and help students go directly into those careers. So that's what the Gateway Apprenticeship Program is. It is a pre-apprenticeship model so we can do it at scale. And collaboration is key, and that's why this discussion today with our education industry and government partners is very, very important. On today's panel, expanding career pathways and engaging broader population, you can't have a better title for the discussion. So we're excited to be here, excited to move forward with the discussion, and I'd like to introduce our first person to the podium here is Adam Artman. And Adam is the president and executive director at Manufacturing Works, and he brings over 15 years of dedicated experience in the nonprofit sector. He has really a remarkable track record in building partnerships and driving ecosystem innovation. His work in developing talent pipelines and promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at all levels has had a really profound impact already on Ohio's workforce development initiatives, not only in your current role, Adam, but really your life's work. He's led significant initiatives focused on bridging community partnerships, skill building, and creating high-quality career pathways. Adam's leadership extends beyond Manufacturing Works as he serves on the Cuyahoga County Workforce Strategic Functions Committee, where he continues to be an advocate for community improvement and collaborative success. So without any further ado, Adam, please come on up.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mike. I've had the opportunity to work with Mike for a couple years now, and you bring a lot of passion to this work as well. So I'm Adam Artman. I'm the executive director of Manufacturing Works. A little bit about Manufacturing Works. We're a unique organization. And so one of the things that makes us unique is we're a membership-based organization, which means we have direct connections to industry. We're also a nonprofit, which means that we develop programs for the broader community. As many of you know, Ohio's manufacturing sector is part of our history, but it's also potentially a big part of our future, right? And we're poised to not only compete nationally across the U.S., but globally. One of the things that Mike mentioned is this idea of prioritizing manufacturing for everyone. And that's been part of this organization's DNA since its inception. We're always trying to think of innovative ways to get different people, different groups involved in manufacturing, whether that's on the floor or the back office, right? Diversity is good for the industry. It's good for individual companies. We are very deeply committed to building this diverse workforce. And with that in mind, today we are announcing a Manufacturing Works for Women campaign. This is a commitment to join other stakeholders. There's so many organizations that have been ahead of the curve on this, but Manufacturing Works is committed to increasing our apprenticeship, our female apprentices, by 150%. So we're really excited about that. At the heart of this campaign is our ability to build and empower ambassadors, female ambassadors, who will go out with their own perspectives and their own experiences and help explain and show how manufacturing can be a career for women, right? Just about half an hour ago, I was in the welding lab, and I saw 4 young ladies who were in welding. And I lit up, right? Because that's not something you see every day. And one of the questions was, why did you choose welding? And we had everything from sparks are cool, right? Which they are, to my father, was a welder, and I learned this growing up. And it was so powerful, right? It's so powerful, and it doesn't happen without institutions like JVS here and guidance and structure. And so that's what our organization is all about, is providing these types of opportunities, building this ecosystem, and then watching it flourish with examples like we saw today. We will continue to collaborate with industry, with government, with workforce partners. And we have this shared mission, and that mission is to create opportunities that support our economy and our communities. So thank you guys all for your commitment to this vision. I look forward to the powerful work we'll accomplish together. Next, I'd like to bring up Dr. Glenn Faircloth. Dr. Faircloth is a fellow leader who shares my commitment to workforce development and empowering the next generation. Dr. Glenn Faircloth, superintendent of the Lorain County JVS, brings a unique perspective and a deep dedication to career and technical education. A United States Army veteran and seasoned educator, Dr. Faircloth has been instrumental in shaping Lorain County JVS into a thriving center for CTE, preparing students for meaningful careers in our community and beyond. Under his leadership, Lorain County JVS has not only become a hub for innovation and workforce training, but also a model for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dr. Faircloth's strategic vision connects students with real-world opportunities, ensuring that they are prepared for the demands of Ohio's growing manufacturing sector on a local and global scale. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Glenn Faircloth and thanking him for hosting us at the Lorain County JVS for today's panel. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to host these type of events, but I will be remiss if it's not necessarily my work, it's our team's work. We have a 13-member board that represents the different 13 associate school districts. They have helped drive this moment. They have helped make sure that we are part of the discussion. My team here with my deputy superintendent, Jerry Pavlik, as well as my principal, Tina Pelto, and her team, and our wonderful maintenance crew, and our treasurers and other administrators here, we all have brought that passion. But once the passion is there, we have to give it to our staff, our teachers, our instructors that come from industry, some come from college, and you all had a chance to see them work. And that means so much to us that you all allowed us just to show you a small glimpse of what we do here at Lorain County Joint Vocational School District. Here we sit in the midst of many things that are going on in Ohio as we begin to drive manufacturing, as we also begin to drive this workforce initiative. Oftentimes we get asked, what does that mean, workforce? Well, we see it here. As many stakeholders have invested in us along with other entities and business and corporate alliances, we are beginning to really ring that bell, and that bell will not be unrung. So I thank you all for allowing us to have this opportunity to really share what we do here, and I hope that you go away with a newfound belief in our young people as they are our future. At this time, we would bring Zoe Shytower, one of our students here at Lorain County JVS. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zoe Shytower, and I am a junior from Elyria in the Engineering, Design, and Technology program here at Lorain County JVS. It's really exciting to be a part of today's event where we're talking about all the different ways to help students like me find careers in manufacturing and tech. Today, I have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker, Wendy Chun-un. The Director of U.S. Department of Labor Women's Bureau, Ms. Chun-Un, has been a leader in advancing workplace rights, family support policies, and economic justice for women and families across the country. Appointed by President Biden, Ms. Chun-Un has brought her dedication and experience in the co-linean building to the Women's Bureau, where she works to bridge communities, organizing, and public policies to create meaningful changes for workers. She has led significant innovative, including expanding paid leave policies, child care, fair wages, and better working conditions for millions of Americans. Her community to diverse and equality, and in conclusion, as her tireless efforts to improve the lives of working families inspire us all. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Wendy Chun-Un.
Zoe, thank you so much. That was a very generous introduction, and it's a real pleasure to be here and to meet you and all your fellow students and teachers. We just had an incredible tour and really got to take in just a little bit about what your everyday is like. And it's very impressive, so thank you for the welcome. And thank you, Mike, and your team for inviting me here to be with all of you. Big thank you to Lorain County JVS. I can't stop talking about it. Everybody I met on the way in, I said, I want this for my kid, right? Like, I need to find this in my community. So it is so impressive, everything that you've built and also the advent of what's to come. So it's my honor to be in conversation with all of you today. And just everybody in this room, I think, recognizes the opportunity in this moment. In just a few short years, really, the Biden-Harris administration has organized really the entirety of the federal government to move some $2 trillion out the door and into local communities, including the billions that have been invested here in Ohio. And so I'm eager for the conversation and to learn from all of you how you plan to use these investments to really transform this community and also your regional economy. At the Department of Labor, a little bit about our role in this moment. We have been working really diligently, again, since the infrastructure laws passed, one-on-one with agencies like Department of Transportation and Energy and EPA and definitely Commerce and others to ensure that the jobs that we're going to create over the next decade are going to be good quality jobs, lots of them union jobs. The Women's Bureau, this is the agency that I direct, has been working tirelessly to ensure that these investments are simultaneously expanding pathways for women and other underrepresented groups into these good jobs of the future, and including ensuring that supports are there for women to not just get in and get introduced to it, but to stay in these careers. You might be saying to yourself, I didn't know there was a Women's Bureau at the Department of Labor. That's not uncommon. So I would share that the Women's Bureau is one of the most historic agencies within the Department of Labor, with a congressional mandate that goes all the way back to improve working conditions for the nearly 79 million working women across America today. And so for the, going on 105 years now, the Women's Bureau has been focused on disrupting patterns that lead to really intersecting forms of discrimination for women, particularly women of color. And these are things like unequal pay, things like unequal access to the kinds of jobs that we're talking about, jobs that are still deemed, quote unquote, non-traditional for women, including jobs in manufacturing. And finally, and really importantly, women shoulder the disproportionate burden and costs associated with caregiving for our families, and these become the overlapping barriers. I have traveled the country, and a lot of people, maybe too many, I'll give you a little opinion there, ask me, why do women want to get into, why are we having this conversation? Why do women want to get into these jobs? And so there is definitely still a misconception that women don't want access to these jobs, right? That they're still non-traditional for a reason. And I have to say, it's absolutely not true. I love the story that you mentioned, Adam, there you are, about the young girls who are welding. That was impressive, right? Because every one of them also said these are family-sustaining careers. They knew it. They can see it. They see how their parents raised them. Women in manufacturing make 16% more than the median for women. This is logical. You said this, Mike. Only 11% of women, though, are entering into the kinds of manufacturing jobs that we're talking about creating. So we have a long way to go to get to bringing all that talent off the sidelines, as you said. For years, and I think many people in this room will agree and have experienced this, women have been both subtly and also not so subtly shut out from these jobs. Conditioned to think, we had a conversation, where's my friend from the Girl Scouts last night, conditioned since a very young age to understand that these jobs are not for them, even though they're good paying jobs. And again, I want to underscore the point about the need to invest in childcare infrastructure in order so that once women come into the jobs, they can stay in them. So essentially, whereas women are half the workforce today, again, that 11% number leaves a lot of room for improvement. I want to mention two kind of shocking analyses that the Women's Bureau ran right at the time that the infrastructure laws were passing, just to give a sense of what this means to our broader economic impact. One of the reports is aptly titled Bearing the Cost, and it was looking at what happened to women during COVID because of the jobs that we were in and are in, and because of the lack of care infrastructure. What it actually revealed is a very long-standing pattern that those of us in the biz understand as occupational segregation. It's the sorting of women into certain jobs. These are the underpaid, undervalued jobs in our economy. Think of care jobs. And really underrepresented in the kinds of high-paying jobs that we're talking about creating. This is, on an annual basis, a sum total of Black women losing $43 billion, that's 1 year, Hispanic women losing more than $50 billion a year compared to white men. That is huge impact for our families and communities. The second report that really shocked me, we again aptly titled The Cost of Doing Nothing. This report showed that if the United States invested in care infrastructure in the way that many of our peers, Canada, Germany, et cetera, if we invested in care infrastructure the way that they do, we would have 5 million more women working in the labor force, and that would amount to a sum total of $775 billion every year. So we are leaving talent and we are leaving money on the table. The good news, and this is the conversation we're going to get into, is that everybody in this room holds the power to make this shift. And this is really what it's going to take to ensure that our economy thrives. I will say last thing about the Women's Bureau, we're not a big agency. We're tiny compared to federal agencies. We don't have, Mike mentioned our sister agency, the Employment and Training Administration. They have big workforce dollars. What the Women's Bureau has, and I think of it as our superpower, is we have grant-making authority. And because of our mission, we've been able to be laser focused on investing in organizations like yours, including public sector project owners that are getting all the infrastructure money now, employers, unions. We have the ability to make grants to really specifically support you all in doing better on women's recruitment and training and retention. And this program is called WANTO, for short, Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this on the panel, but we have really gleaned all the lessons from the programs we've invested in across the country. These are some of the most innovative, those that are really pushing the barrier on recruiting and retaining women. And we pulled them all together into essentially a toolkit. We shorthand call it the Equity Toolkit. But it is all about how you recruit, train, and retain a more diverse, and yes, including specifically women, workforce for the future. So excited to be here in conversation with you all. It really will take all of us as a community to make this revolutionary change. So thank you for having me.
Okay, we're going to move quickly through this. So Wendy's already been introduced, and we're looking forward to a robust discussion. Just a couple of goals, just to level set. What we really are looking to do is zero in on how to expand the pathways to these careers, right? Improve that pipeline with a focus on really spreading the wealth and getting more people in the pipeline. So we're going to discuss strategies and partnerships that can and could potentially kind of transform the manufacturing landscape here in Ohio. So Wendy's been introduced. I'm going to move on to, let me see, Dr. Faircloth, you've been introduced. We know who you are. And I would encourage you all to look into online more background on Dr. Faircloth. Very, very, very impressive. And that's the story. That's what we're trying to do, right? So you really exemplify what we're trying. You're a true expert, if you will. You've lived it. Also, Adam, if you could join us. Adam's been introduced. Now, Tarino Fitzgerald is the Vice President of Talent and Cultural Transformation at Process Technology, and Tarino joined Process Technology in 2023 and has since been instrumental in leading the transformation within the company, fostering an environment where empathy, safety, and teamwork drive innovation. With a global background that spans North America, the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, and Europe, Tarino's expertise in talent development and process design brings a unique perspective to building cohesive, adaptable teams in manufacturing. So Tarino, if you'd like to join us up here. And also, I'd like to welcome Dr. Josette Compton, Program Director at HHW Ohio. Dr. Compton is a visionary in education and workforce development, known for her work in empowering young women in STEM fields. Her background is in print journalism, education, and digital arts, and it's allowed her to really champion the voices of underrepresented communities, particularly those initiatives like Smart Cookie Magazine and the Smart Cookie Project. At HHW Ohio, Dr. Compton is leading efforts to dismantle systemic barriers, ensuring that all women have the opportunity to pursue what are really high-value careers. So if you could join us. Dr. Compton. So we're here, we're going to make this conversational. I'm going to ask some questions just to cue up the conversation. And then when we're done, we'll have about 15 minutes, hopefully, if we're on time, to have questions from the audience. That's both virtually and here in the room. And then we have a signing for commitment. We mentioned the Gateway Apprenticeship Program, the official program. We have several employers here that are actually going to sign on to a commitment to establish or expand registered apprenticeship and hire the students right out of the pre-apprenticeship program. So that's an exciting event post-discussion. And then we have a roundtable after that. So let's jump into it. I'm going to transition over. Okay, can you hear me? Thumbs up? Okay. So really, I think, Wendy, let's start with you as far as sharing some of your insights. You sort of touched on a little bit about, first of all, I love your passion as a parent.
Yeah.
And I've worked with your team. They really are experts in what you do. So really, what kind of initiatives are you undertaking or are you aware of that you're not maybe driving yourself, but as you travel around the country, that really help to build that pipeline and create those opportunities? Maybe you could elaborate a little on that.
Sure, I'd love to. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I'm going to try to not take up too much time, but actually unpack a little bit what I was saying. There's an organization that Women's Bureau follows closely. We do very similar work called the Institute for Women's Policy Research, and I'm citing them because they have just completed a report on women in manufacturing, to really inform the moment. And so I wanted to share a couple of things. I did say this, but they say it with more precision. Women join manufacturing in search of good family-supporting jobs. It's entirely rational. However, how women learn about this is something that I think we need to really pay attention to. And I also say this knowing that the Department of Labor funds the WIOA programs across the country, and a lot of these are, for example, American Job Centers, who are that first door sometimes for people looking to make a shift in their career. So here's what's important to know. 1 in 10 learned about opportunities through high school counselors or at an American Job Center. Only 1 in 10. So we have room to improve. The other thing, important to note at the top, half of women reported that they are always or frequently treated equally to men in the recruiting and in the hiring. So it's not just on the recruitment side, it's really in that engagement side and also moving into retention. A lot of women, close to half, say that they are anticipating or want to have considered leaving the industry once in. And the reason why they say that is because, and it is especially true for Black women, you know this in manufacturing, we also know it in construction, you look around the work site and you are often one of the only. And so especially true for Black women and other women of color, that the level of harassment, oftentimes moving into gender-based violence and not just harassment, is prominent in these workplaces where you are one of the only. The other big reason they cite is the lack of childcare. So again, a little more information on some of the things that I was touching on. I want to go back to the WANTO program. So Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations has been a beacon for, I think, us, but also for a lot of our federal agency colleagues. And then I think it is true for the field, employers, unions, and some of these public sector project owners that are starting to receive all these funds and really having to figure out, how do I recruit, train, and retain women at a much bigger scale? So I have seen a shift. It is also how we are shifting a little bit the purpose or the who we sort of signal we're looking for applications from. In the past 2 cohorts, we have seen really excellent community-based workforce providers. I'll name a couple of them. Fresh Start Women's Foundation, this is in Phoenix. We had a conversation last night about Global Foundries up in Vermont and Upper New York. There's a group called Vermont Works for Women. These are just 2 of some of the recent WANTO grantees. Another one I'm thinking of is Catalyst Connections in Pittsburgh. What's common between all of these places are they're expanding rapidly into semiconductor, advanced manufacturing. And you have groups like these that have really specialized in making sure that they're proactively recruiting women. Things like starting with a conversation about childcare at the top and embedding it and those kinds of supportive services all the way through. Thinking about things like female-only cohorts, which matters when you have that barrier to entry and you want to feel comfortable and welcomed into what might be your next career. So all of these programs are really starting to become intentional connections, that word is going to keep coming up, between industry and some of the community workforce providers, including places like JVS, that are closest to the community they serve and really know how to have that initial conversation and then the long-term conversation about how to stay. So this is why I'm so excited, because clearly this community is ready to make these kinds of shifts. And then having the organizational infrastructure to actually bring us all together and get in this conversation is an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, you framed a couple of opportunities. This is in no way intended to encompass your entire, all your comments, but it starts at K-12 to create awareness, get the spark. Then I heard you say having the alignment so you actually have training opportunities throughout the public education system to get you ready. But there's also a key component for those employers that have to step up on multiple levels, not only to provide the pathway for learn and earn, but also the workplace culture and allowing women in cohorts to move forward so they can lean on each other moving forward. But I think importantly is they can reach out to the Women's Bureau to learn more about best practices, right?
Absolutely.
All right, well then, that's a perfect segue and to you, Dr. Faircloth. Some of the barriers that individuals face growing up, right? So having the guidance that you need at a young age, having a pathway that's maybe clearly presented to you, or maybe in some cases not clearly presented, but you have to find, right? And then having the support mechanisms all the way up through. Your life, and I'm not going to talk about your life, it's up to you if you want to talk about your life, but having read your biography, it's very, very impressive. Where you are today, by the way, I'll say Dr. Faircloth, so it's in the name, right, is really on you. And you've lived that. You've lived that pathway to get where you are today. And now, actually, where you've positioned yourself is to help others through your experiences to become successful. Could you share some of your experiences, how here at, where you currently are leading the effort, how you're preparing students to succeed?
With education, and you mentioned K through 12, truly that's where it starts. That's where the seeds there happen. I think just give you a brief background. Many of us in education, especially in your rural and your large urban, we come from a community that doesn't necessarily have all the resources, or the conversations are not being had. So it's a lack of information that we have in those different pockets. When I stepped into education, this was a field that I didn't think I was going to be in. It was going to be temporary. I wanted to be a pharmacist. So that didn't work out, obviously.
Maybe it did.
Well, it worked out in a way, and it was only because Ohio State had changed their program, so I was delayed, so I started teaching. And when I first started teaching in Dayton Public Schools, I was teaching science. And Ohio State had called, and they said, hey, you got accepted. Are you ready to, go? And at that time, in a large urban school district, I had about 20 kids, majority African-American kids, boys and girls, working on a science fair project on their own lunchtime. Mm-hmm. And so when the recruiter called me, and I just told him, I said, I'm not interested anymore. And when I tell the story, I always get goosebumps because it was something that changed my life that I didn't realize it was going to change. And he said, and they were looking for diversity in their pharmacy program. They certainly knew I was African American, and he shared that with me. And I said, no, I think I'm doing this. And he said, well, how much money you're making? Because at that time, pharmacists was making like $60,000, which was a lot of money. I've never made that kind of money in my life, and I was making $24,000 a year. But that's also the most amount of money I made. I didn't even make that in the military. So it was relevant, right? So
you've redefined pathway.
Yes, exactly. So I wasn't motivated by money that I've never had touched. And ever since then, I never looked back. Because these boys and girls had stories that not only I understood some of them, but I also I believe I had a human obligation now at this point, because they were part of my community, whether I lived in that community or not. Eventually, I will run into them again. And I began working and really trying to understand K-12 education even more so. And over the years, I worked my way up, but I always had a mission, and I think I talked to someone last night at our dinner, and I told him, I said, one of the things that did it for me was I was encouraged to tell my story by another student who had a similar background to me. And she simply said, well, Dr. Faircloth, you wouldn't understand what I'm going through. And I was a principal at the time, and I sat there and said, wow, here I'm the leader of this school, and the school didn't have a soul. They saw me as principal day to day, but they didn't know who and why I was leading in such a way. One of my professors, he called it spirituality and leadership, not religion, but this spirit, this aura that you have to have. And she gave me the courage, one of my former students gave me the courage to tell my story. And ever since then, I was in career technical education at that time, and I saw how the programming changed people's lives. We had welders, we had electricians, we had all these different people that would have never heard these stories. Because one thing we don't think about in education, and I often share this with my leaders, my administrative team and others, is that when that student steps in that classroom, he or she now only has a descriptive story of how you paint that picture. Most of our degrees is art and science and bachelor's, but we forget the art part of that. So when you're in the classroom, you have these kids captivated. They're at the edge of their seat. Almost whenever you tell them, they will challenge their own parents on that. So the first words that they hear or first conversations that they hear outside of their community is something that you said that was really provocative and thought. And they looking at this like, wow, I never heard of those terminologies. So many of them didn't know what an electrician does other than put in light fixtures. They had no idea what all the different type of engineering that they have on their umbrella. So they heard that from us. And if we were able to paint that picture in an artistic way where it was exciting, as you mentioned, when those young people are in those classrooms, that instructor is so powerful. He or she has the ability to paint this Picasso or paint a picture that looks like a 3-year-old. It's up to them. And when it becomes so attractive and so exciting, those kids that go wherever you choose to lead them. And then we prepare them as such. Here at the JVS, we have so many students who have won awards, and they got the chance to travel. In 2012 is when I took over this position, and we were having some budget issues. One thing that was a non-negotiable for me was to cut field trips. I wanted students to be able to experience going to competition. I wanted them to be able to experience going to different manufacturing industries, going to other places outside of Ohio even, to see what's out there. And we stood on that. And now we're bigger and better than what we've ever been before. And I pride myself on that, not just me, but my team. They knew that was the vision, and they worked on that. So those students are able to see other students, what they're doing all across the nation. Since I've been here, we actually had 2 students former students that participated in worldwide competitions. So that was exciting. And my board has been excellent with supporting that. We send kids all over, and not just 1 or 2 or 3. And I remember, and I tell this short story, we was interviewing a person that was coming from another school district, and we talked about that. And he said, yeah, they do this and this and that. And I told him, no, our students get a chance to see it, feel it, touch it, build it, create it. And that's the mindset that I believe that begins to change the fabric of not just what we see in our economy, but what we see in the world.
Thank you for that. One of the things that really jumped out at me with your comments is I think about the greatest attribute of any leader, and I think we're all leaders in our own rights, whether you're trying to get your son or daughter to do their chores, or you lead the Girl Scout troops, or you're a leader of an organization, is really your ability to motivate others and bringing a spirit to this enterprise and helping. I bet you that student didn't come back after they learned about your background and said, you just don't understand what I'm going through, right? And that's bringing that spirit forward. So thank you for that. Now, you're preparing them for the careers, and sitting to your left is Adam. And Adam is really leading an effort to make sure that when they complete those programs, they land somewhere. So he's kind of the glue between employers and, as an intermediary, right? Employers in the school system and others. So from a pathway perspective, big role to play, and partnerships play a big role. But I will say that this is the beginning, actually officially next week, but we're calling this the beginning of our National Apprenticeship Week. So it's 10th anniversary. And I mentioned that, we're contracted by the USDOL to lead an initiative around the country. And I will say that since 2022, in a really non-traditional sector, semiconductor nanotechnology, Since we launched the program, it went from a lot of trepidation, thinking about other types of more conventional building trades programs, which are good for that, but they don't really fit there. We now have 118 employers involved around the country. We have, we're in 24 states. We have 63 community colleges and a national network of related technical instruction providers. We have almost 7,500 apprentices committed and over 2,400 that are actually registered. We've created about 150 standards have been created or are in the process as we speak. Here in Ohio, Manufacturing Works is our industry intermediary. And we have many programs through Manufacturing Works. And we have many apprentices, and that's growing every day. And what we're talking about today is the pathway, the Gateway Apprenticeship, where we can leverage people don't have to write a check, leverage the public education system to get on that track that Dr. Fairchild, your organization, but organizations like yours around the country are putting them on the track. But Adam, from your perspective, what do you see as far as challenges in that pathway? What do you see as opportunities, and also the importance of partnerships and really making that pathway productive?
Okay, so 3 questions there. Yeah, I each got 1. Let me just say, I think we're all very happy you did not become a pharmacist.
Yeah. We win.
So thanks for that question. I think the challenges, there are general challenges, general opportunities, right? And then there's opportunities that are specific to different communities, right? When I think about Gateway Apprenticeship, when I think about upskilling, I really think about this collaboration, what you said is partnerships, right? So we think about the assets in the different communities and how to bring those assets together around a common goal. And some communities have more assets, seasoned assets. We look at Lorain County JVS, we look at Lorain Community College here, right? So this region is so rich with resources. And so the opportunity there is to coordinate those resources around things like the Gateway to Apprenticeship Program, right? And so when we're thinking about young people and how to get young people engaged in careers and how to do things like articulate credit and create standing and reduce the amount of time to a registered apprenticeship, that benefits employers, right? So they get skilled talent more quickly. That's a structured pipeline, right? That allows students to see each step of that pipeline, each step of that structured pipeline, and create milestones around their career and their progress. And so, when we think about bringing those pieces together, there are some communities that don't have any of those pillars. They don't have a JVS, right? They don't have Lorain Community College. And so, as our organization, we're passionate about supporting those types of communities and finding the partnerships and what these organizations do well and filling in the puzzle pieces, right? When we step back, we see the whole picture. We see some of the best practices in pre-apprenticeship, which are some of the things that I just outlined, right? But one of the things that Dr. Faircloth said, I think is so important, is this idea of work-based learning, right? This idea of experiential learning. It's so important because you can be shown something in a classroom, right? You can have, your father or your mother or parent, cousin tell you about something. But what we know about young people and people in general is this idea that if you experience it, it's so much of a richer opportunity, right? And I think of that TikTok, that horse that's painted, of like just the stick figure all the way through the horse that's beautifully done on the head, right? And so we think about experiential learning and we think, okay, so this first touch is essentially a stick figure, but we have this opportunity through internships, and we heard about them here, right? Where young people can get involved with these companies, be hired in by these companies, and really understand what day-to-day is like for manufacturing, right? One of the challenges that we have is that we develop these programs, and these organizations are so focused on the culture of these programs when we do this targeted recruitment. So we think about underrepresented groups, we think about women, and we bring in female cohorts, right? And so as they're learning and they're getting ready for the job, they're surrounded by best practices in terms of culture in these programs that we develop, right? Oftentimes, they're part of the design process. And then they transition into an employment opportunity, and that environment is starkly different than the program that they just participated in, right? And so one of the things that we want to do is talk to these employers. These best practices exist in the workforce community. Let's start to mirror those practices with employers so that it feels like a warm handoff, right? It feels like the environment in which I've been learning and that I've been excited about is an environment that transitions seamlessly into employment. So, to your point, Wendy, a lot of what you said really resonated with me. One of the other challenges that I'll mention is this idea, so you mentioned Intel coming to the state of Ohio, right? And it's for us not to get so narrowly focused on one type of credential or one industry. Manufacturing is rich and vibrant, and the idea of Intel coming is great, and it's going to lift up supply chains everywhere. But that means that when we think about the foundational work, right? Again, we saw students here that are doing rotations, and they're building a foundation for advanced manufacturing. Now, they've got a launching point into semiconductors, into EVs, right? But this idea that we're thinking about advanced manufacturing as a sector, right? And we're thinking about those industries that are a part of that, and we're being intentional about building that foundation across all those industries so that we provide young people with choices and options. Last challenge, and that is we have started to become intentional around young people. There's a whole group of underrepresented and women who are entry-level workers, incumbent workers with manufacturers, right? And so we've designed this structured pathway, K-12, trying to figure out how to move K-12 directly into registered apprenticeship and build that pipeline. We've also got to think about different channels. We got to think about these incumbent workers. How do we provide the same opportunity in upskilling to enter registered apprenticeships? So there's that internal career pathway with employers as well, right? You talked about partnerships, and partnerships are essential to do this work. It doesn't happen without partnerships. You can't have one organization trying to lift all of these things up. It requires everybody. One of the things that's really important that I think we need to build more of is these feedback loops between the community development organizations and these employer networks. And so one of the hats I'm wearing today, so it's not just Manufacturing Works, but we're also a sector partnership. So the Ohio Manufacturing Association endorses sector partnerships. I think there's 15 or 16 of them across the state. And with that infrastructure, we're able to bring employers to the table with our community partners and start to close some of those feedback loops, right? So that we are able to be more effective in the work that we're trying to do together. There's another element here, which is how do we engage underrepresented groups and women more effectively, right? And I think, Wendy, you talked about wrapping resources around individuals, but it's not just resources, it's proximate resources. So for resources that have immediate value to individuals in that pipeline, right? We think about things like financial literacy. That looks really different for somebody who's never had a job than somebody who's in a registered apprenticeship starting to earn a little bit of money, right? And so we've got to think about what we're connecting when we're connecting it to the individuals that are a part of these pathways. And then the last thing I'll just say is be authentic. As organizations and as companies who are part of this process, get to know your community organizations, get to know the people in your community. And so that authenticity goes a really long way in terms of captivating those different groups. When we think about underrepresented or we think about women, they're champions in these different communities. And so authentically engage those champions with strong value propositions. We know, as Wendy said, manufacturing can be a really incredible career for everyone. And so lead with that authenticity and support your local community.
Thank you, Adam. Actually, that's a thread that carries from Dr. Faircloth. He cracked the code with being authentic, and you just stated in a different context that's important. And we're going to be talking to Torino in a second, and he's going to bring another perspective to that. One of the things I do want to mention that's important. I mentioned that we're that's what we do as a nonprofit. Our sole mission is that national strategy and deploying it that I mentioned earlier. But building a broader pipeline of individuals that have those transferable foundational skills that can be used across any of these related industries is so important. That's in our National Talent Hub. That's the database we've developed with employers. So for example, all the knowledge, skills, and abilities, the competencies that are required for semiconductor technician type jobs, we've developed that. That's in a system. However, it's not a sector-specific strategy. that database, and we've worked with USDOL-ETA to redesign the advanced manufacturing competency model, so the foundation of that house is exactly that, those broad required competencies. That does two things. It helps to address, when you have a big player like Intel that comes into town, you're right, you can't focus just on that. But if you have a broad pipeline of people that have those foundational skills, they'll be okay. And we won't deplete the rest of the smaller and medium-sized players in that supply chain while we're at it. And it's also, it's a very cyclical business, semiconductor. When those folks are laid off, they can go to work somewhere else. So you hit the nail on the head on multiple fronts, and you always do, and as the great partner that you are. But it's a good segue. You had mentioned kind of some cultural aspects of that. And Trino, in your intro, and I mentioned kind of where your background a little bit, it's very unique. You have multiple perspectives, multiple countries of multiple perspectives. And you're really, right now, leading the charge to establish a registered apprenticeship at a learn and earn model at Process Technology. You know, you don't always fill your openings, so there's a business reason, but there's also a cultural aspect to that. And what's your view on what it takes as an employer to kind of it's almost like a bait and switch. You get jazzed up when you're working with Dr. Faircloth. And as Adam said, you know, they're really jazzed. And now they go to work at an employer. And oftentimes, this is not the environment. This is not, and you had mentioned, Wendy, that a lot of times you lose people. What are you doing from a workplace culture perspective to help to ease that transition and to help people to stick?
That's a great question, Mike. And first of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about what Process Technology is doing in that space. I think first you have to have or establish a common understanding of what culture is. And for us, how we've defined culture, it's two things. One is how you lead and manage people, and then two, how you pursue strategy. And then secondly, you have to have a common understanding of performance. For us, we operate from a key insight that performance is 90% experience, 10% talent. So how does that translate to what we do as leaders and what we expect from team members? As a leader, at the end of the day, you have to give equal access to opportunity. As a team member, you have to be open to the opportunities that are given to you, although they may or may not align to your career aspiration in some way, shape, or fashion. So let me offer a personal example. I worked at American Express for 20 years. I started when I was 5. And I was offered an opportunity that did not align with my concept of where my career should go. And I said no. And I said no to the president of that division, who was also in my line of leadership. Didn't go well. And then I had to explain to his leader my rationale for saying no, which I did. And so as we were talking, he spun his pen around as I was explaining my rationale, and he politely asked me, "What are your options?" I didn't have any. So I took the job, and it was a job that changed the trajectory of my career. Because what they had astutely identified is that I had a gap, a transferable skill gap that this opportunity would close if I was successful at it. And how I approached the opportunity is I reimagined the opportunity itself, the team, the metrics by which we were evaluated for success, and I reconstituted the team in the organization, but in a different construct that ultimately led to its success. And from that, it opened up a new pathway of opportunities to me that would not have been available, because there was an open-ended question about my skill set that this opportunity was going to answer. So as a team member, had I not been open to taking this opportunity that in my mind did not align with my upward trajectory, because at that age, I only thought in an upward trajectory, not like this. Because that's how the real world works. And what we have to balance as employers is the need of the organization with the aspiration of the team members. And sometimes it's not a perfect union. It's not at the perfect time. But if you trust the process, you trust the leader, it will get you to where you ultimately need to be. So the takeaway for me is you really you can accomplish everything that you want to accomplish in life. You just can't do it all at once. And if you play the long game, you tend to achieve more than if you are short-sighted. So we reinforce it's about opportunity, it's about building transferable skill sets. And for me, transferable skill sets is not about the functional and technical skills required to do quality or supply chain. It's about self-awareness. Are you managing yourself before you manage others? It's about problem solving. Every big business, at the core of it, is about solving problems. It's about collaboration, meaning working collaboratively with others to drive a very particular outcome. It's about unifying people around a common vision, and it's about imagining a new future, which is conceptual thinking. So I try to focus on those transferable skill sets because of the points that were made earlier. It doesn't matter what group or functional area you go to. If you have a core understanding of those functional leadership skills, you have an advantage because you will adapt to the problems that you encounter. So it's about diverse experience that allows you to see problems from a 360-degree perspective.
That's very, very valuable guidance. And this is we have to figure out how to get this recording into young people's minds, though, because oftentimes you don't think of things that way. The one thing I'm curious, did you figure that out on your own, or did the boss have kind of a come to Jesus discussion with you, for you to figure that out? Because it's really unusual for someone young to decide to go, take advantage of those opportunities and have the understanding of why.
I was forced.
Okay. He's honest. I love trying him. He's honest.
I didn't have any options. But what I did tell him was, and this is the second in command at American Express, and what I did tell him, humbly and politely, is that next time I will have options. And I did. The next time we regrouped at this same type of situation, I did have options. So I was forced to humbly accept that opportunity because let's be clear, the decision was made. They were just waiting for me to come along. And this is where empathy, leadership, trust comes into play. I want to be clear, the decision was made that I was going to take this opportunity.
Okay, it wasn't yours, gotcha.
It was made. They were gracious enough to accommodate me accepting that opportunity. Because when the announcement went out, I wept. I cried because I felt embarrassed. Because again, the opportunity didn't match my concept of what I should be doing. But because of that opportunity, it demonstrated that I was in fact strategic, that I was in fact capable of unifying people around a common goal, that I was in fact capable of transforming an underperforming team. So it was because of that that I learned, that I demonstrated those skills. And the thing about diversity, equity, inclusion, what you're ultimately trying to solve for is to discourage people from leading with bias and then creating a narrative or engineering a narrative that supports that bias, right? You lead with access to an opportunity, and then you give people the opportunity to demonstrate their ability to perform given the problem that they're asked to solve. That's a very different approach. My leadership style is always questioned, always. And it's because of my experiences as a leader that I've developed this leadership style. So I will let you fail. I will allow you to fail. And what that means is I will give you all the support you need. I will say things like this: if I were you, I would approach it like this. And here's my rationale. Here's where I think your blind spot is, but the decision is yours. So what does that mean? People talk a lot about accountability. Accountability for me is who made the decision, because whoever made the decision owns the outcome. I'm here to guide your thinking, to point out your blind spots, to leverage my experience, to guide what you do and how you think about what's being presented to you. You own the accountability to make the decision. And even in a bad decision, I'll support you. But when you fail or succeed, don't look at me, because you made the decision, you own the outcome, and here's what I did to support you.
Mike, I'll tell you that I would question the people that question your leadership style, and I think all the companies need a Torino. So.
And I will say this, I attribute that to American Express. Right?
Okay.
American Express is all about leadership. It's not so much about the goals you're expected to achieve, but how you go about achieving those goals.
So their corporate culture is aligned with that.
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay. Well, they planted a really good seed in you, Torino. So we're lucky to have you here today, and Process Technology is lucky to have you. I think with that, and really bringing it right back full circle to why we're here today. So Dr. Compton, you're really focused on, and I think it's pretty much your life work, to really help position women leaders for success. And you're focused on tech careers, STEM careers. These are high-value careers.
Yes.
Wendy shared some statistics on there's a lot of opportunity there. So you're doing some good work. You're aware of initiatives. You're involved with initiatives. And so maybe you could share some of the work that you're involved in, or some of the work that you see, what's maybe impactful along those lines as far as preparing young women for success. And then the other thing that's important, and you could probably touch on, great position to share your thoughts on, is how do you change the perception of these careers? On the tour, there was a young lady in one of the programs just a little while ago, and she's, I'm not sure I want to do that. Yeah. I'm not, and then we had said, and you had said, well, you should do that anyway. Sort of along the lines of what you were just saying, Trino. Try it, gain the experience. Mm-hmm. But you could tell she was very unsure about this world that she was cool with the education, but not really sure. So maybe you could share a little bit about that as well. How do you encourage people to really pursue those careers?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm a former educator, and so in this position, I work with girls. I've always worked with girls. That's what Smart Cookie was about. But now that I'm in the position at Hard-Hatted Women, HHW Ohio, what I find when I talk to younger women is that they want to do something, they just don't want to go to college. And I don't know if it was my generation that made them feel bad because we have all this student loan debt, but they're like, college is not for me. So generally what I found as an educator is exposing, having interactive activity for girls so that they actually see what it is, kind of similar to what Dr. Fairchild had said, the integration part. I worked at a digital arts high school where we integrated technology, art, and English language arts, as well as math. And so that was very successful. And even today, when I talk to young women, they're like, manufacturing is so dirty, I would never want to do it. But then when we take them over to Magnet, and forgive me, I do not know what Magnet stands for. I know it's Manufacturing Association Group, but Magnet is a place in Cleveland, Ohio, and it is a part of a network. They have robotics, they have everything there. And once the girls see that, once we actually show them what manufacturing is, like we show them, hey, this chair was manufactured. Hey, your phone was manufactured, or this robot is, this arm. And they're like, oh my gosh. So I think what it is with younger women, they want to use their mind. They are geeked about technology, but there are so many misconceptions about what they can do and what they can't do. And also because I'm dealing with a lot of the demographic that is traditionally disenfranchised, economically, socially, everywhere, they don't hear those conversations, right? What they see is probably a parent working a union job and that parent being angry all the time. So they don't want to see that, right? So when we show them the technology, when we take them into these labs and they see the FANUC arms, they see all these different things, then they're like, well, how do you do that? And then the second thing is, no, I'm not good with math. So I think as a former teacher, and as an educator, what we have to do a better job at is really doing hands-on experimentations with students. The traditional classroom no longer works. Kids want to use their hands, they want to use their intellect, but they want to feel like they have permission to do it. And I think within the school structure, it is so rigid that it's almost like any expansion of creativity is like, no, that's not going to get you to pass that state standardized test, right? So if we can take that excessive testing out and have kids explore more, or even like Dr. Fairchild said, which I thought was very brilliant because it's part of my dissertation that I wrote about, which is the international aspect of it. There are other countries that are doing manufacturing on a very high level, and I think kids need to see that. If you talk to art students, a lot of times that students that go to art schools, what will happen is that they will do summer abroad trips so that they see how art is being made and conceived in other locations. So I think we have to kind of take kids out of the bubble, right? And even with our program at Hard-Hatted Women, when we take women out of the bubble, where they think it's normal Ray, where it's sweaty, it's dirty, it's greasy, once we tell them, like, this is how you can scale your life, right? You don't have to be a home health care aide. You don't have to be in food preparation. You don't have to do child care and daycares that are underpaying you. You can actually map out this career, but let's start one by one. Let's step it up. Let's scale it up. And so that's what's been successful for Hard-Hatted Women is our WISE Pathways program, which is the Women in Sustainable Employment program. And it is a job exploration program where women are in there for 7 weeks, and we walk them through all the major trades with a big focus on construction, advanced manufacturing, and technology. So we have women that come in and they think, oh, I've seen it on TV. I can get this quick certification in cybersecurity and make $100,000 tomorrow. And it's just like, no, this is a process, as you were mentioning. There is a process to this. So it has to be a combination of experiential learning. It also has to be some systematized learning because we need students to speak the vocabulary that is used in those industries. And then also, as Adam said, we have to do better at making that transition, right? Because when you're in WISE Pathways, you're all with women, and we're doing all this feel-good stuff. We're doing deep breathing. We're talking about, you know, the woes of being women, but we're also talking about those skills that need to be set up and those educational and apprenticeship opportunities that we provide for them. So yes, that's, I think we have to make sure that we are walking people step by step through the process so that it is no longer intimidating, especially for young girls starting in 11th grade, because that's when they think they're grown. So that's when we need to start telling them, if you think you're grown, let's start planning like a grown-up. So.
You don't realize it until you are grown up, right?
Right.
We have a few minutes before we get into questions, so I'm thinking, why don't we do a kind of more of a speed round of Q&A, if we will, and it's sort of, we'll stick with your themes. So with that, I'm going to start with you, Wendy. So looking across really many sectors that you work with, all regions of the country, et cetera, can you call out you know, a couple of really solid strategies that we can leave the audience with that would work? And I'll say it again, they can still reach out to your office to get more, but if you would, just maybe a couple highlights.
Yes. So I will admit up front, I think one of the smartest things I did in this job was to actually hire as our deputy a 35-year journey worker. She's a sheet metal, journeyed out, and then eventually retired out of the industry, which is nearly unheard of, Black woman. So Leah Rambo broke it down for us, and she was looking at what some of the WANTO programs are about. She obviously had a career in not just sheet metal, but also the apprenticeship school and training. And she said, it's really simple. You gotta want women, you got to get women, and then you got to keep women. And she said it just that plainly. So the toolkit that I mentioned that we sort of familiarly call the equity toolkit, I think it's called Tools for Building an Equitable Infrastructure, workforce, is really that simple: want, get, keep. And so the want category, I think, is really what this discussion is shaping up to be. It is about how you do that planful, data-driven analysis about what's the workforce demand going to be over the next X number of years, what is the current workforce capacity, who's in the pipeline, how do we structure the pipeline for equity from the start. And that means, you know, it was the Manufacturing Works for Women program. It was you mentioning, and our goal, we're setting a goal, 150% increase, right? It's that purposeful, really plotting decision up front that you want women. The get women is, to me, it's so intuitive that I often overlook how, you know, what the elements are. I wrote them down for myself, but it's all about the recruitment, and it's just that intuitive, right? Are we actually using women's images in our recruiting materials? So simple, not costly. This is not earth-shattering. Are we recruiting women from, you know, the kinds of jobs or places, hubs in the community where they're gathering, or the kinds of jobs where they're, you know, they have maybe a tougher skin if they're going into an environment that is deemed non-traditional. So Leah would often talk about recruiting former veterans, right? Bartenders. So, you know, places that are in our everyday life and you just don't think about it as a recruitment center. See it to be it. You said it, Dr. Compton. You got to see it to be it. So who are your ambassadors for the program? Young women have to see other women, hear from other women. Here's how I did it. Here's the point that was tough. Here's the point that was easy. You can do it too. So the see it to be it thing just screams out loud and clear. And then keep women. This is a lot of what you're talking about in terms of organizational culture. Goes back to some of my original points about when you are the only on the work site and you are facing inordinate harassment, discrimination at times. It's not always like that, but I don't think we want to underestimate it. You have significant family responsibility, and the minute your childcare gets disrupted, you gotta stay home. It means, you know, often that you lose that opportunity on the work site, and that accumulates over your career. So things like, you know, ensuring that workplaces have, and I worked a lot on this in my career, paid family medical leave, right? Paid sick days, that you have access, and we're investing in childcare, and you're helping your newer employees navigate that, your apprentices navigate that, your pre-apprentices navigate that. So a lot of that supportive services, and that you're addressing up front. We are a culture of respect. This is a safe and respectful work environment. Here's what's expected of you. Here's what I will do as the employer. So it almost just boils down into those very simple, straightforward things.
Simple concepts,
Yeah.
but you have to live by them.
Exactly.
You know, I shared with you last night, I was a single parent. I raised
Yeah.
two kids. I was at 19 years old, a business manager for a union, working in a factory, raising two kids with nobody else in the house, working 12-hour rotating shifts. I'm not a woman. I'm just saying that. But I have experienced a lot of what women go through. So there's a lot of truth to, you know, but those are great takeaways. So simple, though. You left it simple.
It is very simple.
All right. So that was like everybody can do that.
It's true.
Dr. Faircloth, from your perspective and really creating that strong pipeline, if you will, that's the kind of middle of the world. That's where you reside. Is there something that you could leave the audience with as far as maybe an example of a partnership or a mentorship, something that you can do to really strengthen that pipeline and make sure that we're able to prepare those students for success?
Certainly. I think oftentimes in education, we get so many folks that want to be partners, which is great. But some want to be partners for a purpose to say, hey, we partner with them. And some want to be true partners where they inside the school buildings, they doing things, they offering and giving us an opportunity to have some of their resources that we cannot get. That's how you create these strong pipelines we have certain programs that in career tech, we all have advisory boards. So these advisory boards are generally folks that are part of that particular industry that help guide and keep us relevant of sort. And we have some great ones, and we have some great partnerships, but some to be frank, we just have partnership on paper. So that's where the true being authentic, being purposely. If this is with something that you want, be it. You know, it deals with, if you say you need employees, you want to be a partner, let's partner up. And my definition simply of partner is that you pull some weight, I pull some weight. I may have certain tools and things that you don't have, and you may have these things. Let's put them together. Let's put it on true paper. I think that eliminates there, because each year we have a senior ceremony where 400 plus students go across the stage there. Those are 400 plus students who have industry credentials, who have soft skill training, they have some experiences, and as you all have had a chance and the opportunity to see labs, they're working with real equipment. Unfortunately for us, with fundings and certain things like that, not all the time we can update our labs as quick as a company because we're not for profit. But these other companies that can do that, be a true partner. That's the only time, that's the frustration part with this. It's almost like if you want women, just as Wendy suggested, then where is that at? Is it in your brochures? Is it part of your mission statement? Is it part of that culture? Or any diversity for that matter? And it goes along with partnerships too. If you want that partnership here, and for women, exactly like you guys got a chance to see in welding, you said, wow, these young ladies are in there. We had many of our students that I mentioned go to our competitions. Our best students are often our female students. We had one young lady who was in our collision repair program. She used to paint. And she got a chance to work on those who are in the cars. Barrett Jackson is a huge premier auction site for cars and collectibles. She got a chance to work on a car that was presented there. We have some of our best female painters are painting at Rydell, a company here locally. And if you looked at some of those banners, I know you guys was doing an abbreviated tour, some of those banners and you see different names, those are our top female students who have won these awards. One thing that we tried to be here, which we had a civil rights audit, and our team, we had to hear some things that we didn't want to hear, but we also acknowledged, say, these things are true. So how do we make that better? Having these difficult conversations when you talk about these different sectors, some people get uncomfortable with that. It's a shame that a female should feel some kind of way working at a manufacturing plant just because she's a female. That should not happen. And how can we make that better so that they feel comfortable when they leave there, they don't get discouraged with going into that particular industry? And that's the part that a partnership, a true partnership, can help us. Like, hey, we have this problem at our company. How can we begin to work with the young people so they can know how to combat it?
So partnerships are important, but it's also sharing of those best practices, and that's some of the platforms that you're advancing, the ability to share that. So we're down to we're just about out of time, but any quick points on key takeaways of this discussion?
Well, it's not a key takeaway, but I wanted to say with what Dr. Faircloth was saying, mentorship has been proven to be very, very important in terms of aspirational growth for specifically girls of color. And seeing that representation or seeing someone there that can walk you through to help you navigate is very essential. So when you talk about partnerships, that is very important to also seek practitioners to be mentors, not people who are talking, but people who are actually doing the work to mentor young people. So that's
Not just any mentor, someone you can identify with.
Exactly.
Right.
I'll also make a point about culture that I think has been inspired by some of the dialogue here. I think culture is so difficult because it's one of those areas that's very nebulous and it's not very tangible. One way to make it tangible is when you are presented with a situation where you have to make a decision, and it's a binary choice, culture is what you choose to do. So let me offer you an example. So I wasn't here yesterday to participate in the dinner and some of the pre-event activities. Part of what drove that is a discussion that I was having with a team member who was, in her mind, was in a crisis, right? Like me, she was offered an opportunity that was not aligned with her concept of where she thought she should be. And it led to a 2-hour conversation, right? And I had to help walk her through, not decide for her, the variables that might go into making a decision, given the tension between the organizational priorities and her career aspirations. That was a decision that defined our culture. I chose to stay there with her in her moment of crisis, in her mind. Young adults always have crises. In that moment of crises with her, that defines our culture, right? In that particular case, it was one-on-one, but then these people talk.
Yeah, sure.
So when you think of culture, there's a binary choice. Your decision defines the culture, not the language. Decisions, actions, then language.
And those decisions get legs throughout your organization. That's an important takeaway. Do we have time for any questions? We're looking good. I think the clock was for the panel, so I'm assuming this is just for the panel. So we have a few minutes left for questions in the audience or anything from online by chance. I don't know if that's good or bad. Does that mean that we answer every possible? You're all rock stars, I'm telling you. Well, then what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it. What's really exciting here today, so we've talked about some best practices, some of the opportunities that we have. There's assets available, so you can always reach out to the folks. I mean, you know the people from your region, right, that are here that you can connect with. I already shared the U.S. Department of Labor National Apprenticeship Week. You can go to apprentice.gov and learn about activities and what's happening, and there's information there. At the Institute, we're NIICA, NIICA.org. There's a host of infrastructure program strategy that we work through. Manufacturing works here in the region as our primary contact, but much of what we talked about as far as strategy and what you need to do, platforms to connect, et cetera, we have at your disposal. So if you work with Adam or go to the website, have a question, we will help you, everything from registered apprenticeships to talent pipeline strategy, et cetera. So what we're going to do that's really exciting is we're not just here to talk, we actually are officially kicking off the Gateway Apprenticeship Program here in Ohio that we hope to expand throughout all the career and technical education programs. And that really is an automated process to seamlessly align curriculum with courses to the regional needs of employers. So when the students graduate, they already have many of the required competencies. They get credit for them in competency-based registered apprenticeships. So they actually go directly into employment, and they are able to advance more quickly, which is good for the employer, and it's good for the individual. And everything that we do on the apprenticeship side is also represented in these commitments because, as I said before, the employers are not only committing to hire if there's openings and the individuals are qualified, et cetera, they're coming out of those programs, but also to expand or establish those registered apprenticeships. And all of our registered apprenticeships are stackable, right? So when you learn something and you decide to go up that ladder at your current employer or branch off, or whether you're an adult, by the way, we mentioned it has to also include adults. The same system applies for adults. Through the National Talent Hub, which is deployed as part of this process, adults can get credit for what they've learned, wherever they get the experience from, and that's also applied to these registered apprenticeships. So it's really exciting, and we really thank the employers that are going to make the commitments today. Thanks to all our panelists. You're doing great work. I love the smiles and the passion. It's always a pleasure to be here. This is not my first visit here. So thank you all for what you do. Thanks for being part of the region and advancing this work. So with that, let's transition over to the signing table. I'm going to move that for you.
Thank you. Okay.
These are hugely complex binding agreements that had to go through the law, the legal departments. All right, so first of all, I'm going to call the individuals up in the organization. So Ryan Lloyd is the production manager for aircraft wheel and brake at Common. Hopefully proper pronunciation. Cayman? Command. See, I did that on purpose just so Beth could. So, and Beth's with Manufacturing Works. We have everybody else from the panel. Wendy, come on up as well.
Yes.
I don't think Ryan's here.
Up there you go. Right under the light. It's
You're
like
backlit.
it's like last Sunday I dropped the pass because I was looking into the sun here. We're going to do photos, so. All right, Ryan, your legal department's going to be happy with you that you signed that. Ryan, thanks very much for your commitment. Okay, Ryan Carroll is plant manager for DuPont. Ryan?
He's right here.
And I know DuPont, I know you're cleared legally to sign it, there's no doubt.
Congratulations.
Oh. Thank you very much. All right, Stephen Weber, he's the plant engineer for Orlando Baking Company. Stefan? Stefan.
There you go.
I just got new glasses. I'm just like.
Look this way, sir. Photographer, there you go. Everybody this way. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Great.
Charles Metcalf, corporate maintenance and apprenticeship manager for.
Press right.
See, I avoided that. I'm just
I'm
going to.
blinded by lights. Is Charles here?
Charles. Okay, Torino, we know who you are. Leading the way. Torino, thank you very much. Angela Carpenter, human resource manager for Rebuild CDI.
Great.
And last but not least, Aaron Schneider, the Director of HR for
Togus.
Okay, and that's it. I think we'll mix it up for a little while, right? And then a little tight shot here, okay?
Come on in.
I'll give it the side.
Mike can get in there. You guys get right at the table. There you go. Eyes here, guys.
Okay, thanks
Great.
everyone. And we're going to spend a few minutes and then we'll transition to the round table.
So great.
Okay.